Yeah, that was my audition to play Spider-Man in a couple of years' time. Anyway, Spider-Man No Way Home comes out very, very soon, and as we know from the footage we have seen, there's a lot of villains. 5 confirmed to be exact, with a couple rumours, which I'll speak on later, but that means that a lot of fights are going down in this movie. So who is going to win those fights? Well, that is what this video is going to try to answer. I'm going to be predicting the outcome of every possible 1 versus 1 fight with a Spider-Man and a villain, and there's more than one Spider-Man in this movie. I know it's not confirmed, but it's near enough. Like, Tobey and Andrew are going to be in this movie. Have your debating war in the comments down below, whether you think they're going to be in it or not, but I definitely think they will. So I'm going to be doing Tom versus every villain, Andrew versus every villain, and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man versus every single villain, and the 3 rumoured ones I'm going to include in this video today. So, let's get started with Tom versus the Green Goblin. But wait, before we get into that, please do subscribe, it helps me out a lot, and if you enjoy this video, leave a like on it. So, out of all the villains that are going to feature in this movie, I think Goblin is one of the weaker ones, to be honest. However, that doesn't mean he's not going to cause carnage in this movie. He is very, very intelligent, but I just think in a fight, he's probably going to lose most of them. So if he has a one-on-one, straight one-on-one with Tom Holland Spider-Man, I'm saying that Tom is going to win, because Tom did very good against Vulture, who, if I'm being honest, would probably beat Goblin because his weapons are better. I get Goblin is also like an enhanced strong human, but I don't think Vulture would try and hand-to-hand fight him. But yeah, that was a really weak version of Tom that fought Vulture and did pretty well, and now Tom is much better. He has a much better suit. I think that he would beat Green Goblin. As for Tobey Maguire, well, we've seen that play out. It's called Spider-Man 1, and Tobey is obviously going to win that one. And as for Andrew, I'm actually going to give Andrew the dub as well. Andrew is probably the fastest, and that's going to work very well against Goblin, so he'd be able to avoid a lot of Goblin's weapons. So yeah, a clean slate win for all the Spider-Men here. Then on to Dr. Otto Octavius, and I think Tom is going to lose this one. I mean, we've basically seen it happen in the trailer. He's literally pinned up against a wall, so I think it's pretty clear that Tom is going to be losing to Dr. Octopus. As for Tobey Maguire, yes, he struggled a lot in Spider-Man 2, took a couple of times to beat Dr. Octopus, and had to get him in water and drown his arms, but I'm going to give him the dub. And I'm almost certain that if Tobey and Doc rematched, Tobey would win, because of something that I will mention later, so stick around for that. As for Andrew, I'm also going to give him the dub. Like I said, he's probably the fastest, and speed is going to be immense when trying to avoid, 4 big octopus arms, so I think Andrew would also take this dub. He's also dealt with Rhino, presumably, at the end of TASM 2, and Rhino is incredibly strong. Maybe stronger than Otto's arms, the exoskeleton of Rhino, that is. So if Andrew can deal with that, I think he could deal with Dr. Octopus. And now on to the first Andrew Garfield villain, Lizard. And I also have something interesting to say about him. But who do I think will win, Lizard or Tom Holland? Well, I think Tom is going to take that one. Tom is very physically strong. I mean, he literally caught the hammer of Cull Obsidian, who is definitely much stronger than Lizard, so I think Tom is definitely stronger than Lizard. So I'm giving him the W in this one. As for Tobey, same thing applies. I think he's also going to win this one. He has fought much more formidable opponents than the Lizard, so he's definitely going to win this. And as for Andrew, this is where it gets interesting. Doctor Strange says in the trailer that all of these villains died fighting Spider-Man, but Lizard never got killed by Andrew. But that's not exactly true. It has been confirmed that a few years after both TASM movies, Andrew actually killed Lizard. Somehow they must have had another fight and Andrew got the better of him, meaning that Andrew's probably going to win this fight in No Way Home, because he's literally killed Lizard before. And speaking of Andrew Garfield villains, we're moving swiftly on to Electro, someone very interesting from the footage we've seen. He seems to have had a pretty big upgrade, as he literally has a completely different design. He's got yellow lightning, he has an arc reactor, so we can assume that he's going to be stronger in this movie. However, Tom Holland Spider-Man has some suits that would do pretty well against lightning. For example, the Iron Spider can definitely absorb lightning and actually be powered up by it, much like an Iron Man suit, as Iron Man did design the Iron Spider. However, I don't think Tom is going to face him in the Iron Spider. I think the Iron Spider is not going to be used after the bridge fight scene. I think when he first meets Electro, he's going to be in that black and gold suit that we see in the trailer, and that seems to be specifically designed to face Electric, at least in some kind of way. I mean, he literally has magic around his arm at that point as well, so I'm definitely taking him in that fight. And then at the end fight, Tom has another new suit. Chances are he's made it from some high-tech stuff rather than just, you know, like a knitted together Spider-Man suit or whatever. So I definitely think Tom will be able to hold his own and win against Electro. As for Tobey though, someone with significantly less technology, he's never had any need for it, I think he would lose to Electro. Again, partially down to Electro's buff, but also the fact that if Tobey gets caught by any of Electro's electric, I think it's ropes for him and he will end up losing that fight. Tobey is also likely to have a big upgrade because someone else that didn't die at the hands of Spider-Man is Sandman, but I'll talk about that later. But basically, Tobey is also taken a few years after Spider-Man 3, supposedly, when he is brought into this universe, meaning he's probably got better. Maybe not necessarily stronger, because he already was pretty strong and probably the oldest Spider-Man, I believe. So he probably just got more experience and skill, therefore making him overall better. But I still think that he would lose to Electro. And as for Andrew, yes, Andrew would have got a buff as well, because he's taken years after TASM 2. But Electro has probably also been improved, like I said, and when they first fought, Andrew only won because Gwen killed Electro, and I don't think Gwen is going to be in this movie to save him, so Tom is the only one that beats Electro in my opinion. Now on to Sandman, and this is where it gets interesting again because I'll talk about the thing between him and Tobey, but I think if Sandman fights any of the Spider-Men near water, or anything that can be like used to burn him or set him alight or anything like that, they would win because they're his two weaknesses. But I'm not sure if that's going to happen, meaning that I'm not sure if they're going to win. I think if none of those two things occur, Sandman wipes all three Spider-Men. Maybe not at the same time, but definitely one-on-one he would take any of the three. Now let's get into the interesting part with Tobey. Tobey has also been said to have came across Sandman a couple of years after Spider-Man 3 and end up killing him, much like Lizard and Andrew, meaning that somehow Tobey won. And you think that I'd then say Tobey wins against Sandman in this movie? Well, I don't really believe that he beats Sandman in any way that doesn't involve water or fire, so I'm saying that Sandman wins. But that would potentially mean that Sandman gets a buff as well, and Tobey, so it seems like all the characters are getting stronger from this movie. I mean, I would say Tom as well. Not really, because this literally takes place right after No Way Home, so I wouldn't expect Tom to be any stronger, but there's a lot of scaling videos that puts Tom's physical strength like above the others anyway, so it'd be nice for them to catch up and it to be like quite even with like who's the strongest Spider-Man. And that's all for the villains we've actually seen on screen, but there's plenty more rumoured ones, and I'm going to be including 3. I'm not sure if any of them are going to be in it, because there's been a lot of people saying it's going to be 5 villains rather than a Sinister 6, because Sony want their own Sinister 6 movie, but there's always a chance, and it's a bit more fun. So the first one of rumoured villains that I want to be including is Vulture. Tom versus Vulture. We can probably guess that Tom is going to win that one, because like I said earlier, a Tom Holland Spider-Man, far from as good as he is now, fighting Vulture, he did alright. Now he is the way he is now, much stronger. I think he would win that one. Tobey, with the way that he dealt with Green Goblin quite easily, I think, despite Vulture being better in my opinion, I think Tobey would also be able to deal with Vulture. And as for Andrew Garfield, there's something very interesting about him that I failed to mention earlier. At the end of TASM 2, it was really set up that the Sinister Six within his own movie would be established. So he could come into this movie, as we know he is going to be taken out a couple years later because of the Lizard thing, he could come into this movie having already faced a Sinister Six, meaning that he could be the best, and if he is, then he's definitely beating Vulture. However, he may have only faced the Sinister Six villains individually rather than as a whole 6, because if he faced them as a whole 6, and survived, and he's in this movie, well, why are Tom and Tobey even here? So either way, he's faced some of them, survived because he's alive to fight today, so he's definitely going to be able to beat Vulture, as Vulture is not the strongest out of the potential 6 villains that would have been in Andrew's Spider-Man Sinister 6. But that could make for a very interesting conversation if we find out that Andrew has faced, say, his version of Green Goblin, his version of Rhino. There was Dr. Octopus arms at the end of TASM 2 as well, Lizard again, and beat them all. He could be the strongest in this movie, you never know. Maybe not physically, but the most skilled. Anyway, on to the next villain, and that is going to be Venom. A lot of people think Venom will have a major role in this movie. I personally think more of a post-credit scene, and I also think he's going to be more of a good guy rather than a villain, but we'll include him anyway just because it's fun. Spoilers for Venom: Let There Be Carnage. We know what happened in that post-credit scene, so it's likely he gets some kind of role in No Way Home. But how does he fare against the Spider-Man? I think he beats all three of them. Tobey definitely has the best chance because he has faced a version of Venom before. He knows his weakness is sound and fire, but I don't think he's going to get a chance to exploit those weaknesses, meaning that Venom would also wipe as well as Sandman. And lastly, it's going to be Mysterio. There is actually a scene after Mysterio's death where one of his team members pulls up some kind of gadget and it says 500 drones still active. So was there an illusion showing that Mysterio was actually dead? Well, I kind of don't believe it, because Tom would have sensed it, because his spidey sense was very, very good at the end of Far From Home, so he would have sensed if Mysterio is actually there or not. But either way, some people think he's alive. I can kind of see it because of that 500 drones thing. So how would Mysterio without Edith, but with 500 drones, do against Tom Holland? Well, Tom beat him when he had Edith, so I think he can do it again. Tobey, I think 500 drones is too much for him, to be honest, and I think Mysterio would win that one. And as for Andrew, like I've been saying, he's one of the fastest. If what I said about his version of the Sinister Six earlier was true, then I think he could pull this one off as well. So I'm going to say that Andrew Garfield would win against Mysterio. So let's clarify then. Tom Holland Spider-Man, in my opinion, wins 5 of these fights. Tobey only wins 4, but wait, I'll explain that in a second. And Andrew also wins 5. So you may be thinking, that's crazy, Tobey is probably going to win the most. Why has he got the least wins here? Well, if you consider what I said about him having the greatest chance against Venom and Sandman, I think it's relatively fair. Some of these villains counter his weaknesses rather well, for example, Electro. And when you consider 2 of his losses are from villains that aren't even confirmed to be in the movie. So if you only do it from villains in the movie, then that completely changes, because Tom got a win against Vulture and Mysterio not in the movie. So did Andrew, he got a win against Vulture and Mysterio. So if you take 2 off of theirs, that gives them 3. And if you minus the 1 from Vulture for Tobey, because I said he loses to both Venom and Mysterio, then they are all on 3 wins. Just because they win 3 out of the 5 potential 1v1s doesn't mean the end fight scene is going to be incredibly one-sided, because the Spider-Men are clearly better than the villains, because there's an extra 2 villains, and if only the 5 are in the movie, there is 2 Spider-Men that are going to have an extra villain, and then one will be doing a one-on-one. So obviously it's going to be quite a close fight at the end. But now let's have a quick look at the villains and what their record is. Goblin wins 0 of these fights, but I said what I said earlier about him still causing carnage. I definitely think he'll kill 1 minimum, maybe 2 people close to Tom's Peter Parker. Then Doc Ock, he only wins 1. Electro wins 2. Sandman wins 3. Venom wins 3. Mysterio wins 1. Lizard wins 0. Vulture wins 0. And that is all. So with that being said, let me know how you would attack Andrew, Tobey, and Tom if you were leading the Sinister Six. Which villains would you put on who? And let's make it more interesting by saying one of the rumours is confirmed to be true, so you can put 2 on each. Which of the rumours would you pick to be true, and how would you stack them up against each other? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, with that being said, thank you for watching. Please do leave a like if you did enjoy, subscribe for some more Marvel content, and with that being said, goodbye.